Hey, how's it going? I'm Nathan with the ebook reader blog. For this video, I'm going to show you guys how the new 6.8-inch Kindle Paperwhite handles PDF files. So it's been several years since I uploaded a video showing PDFs on a Kindle. Unfortunately, not really much has changed. So you got your list view and your grid view here on the home screen. As you'll notice, PDF files do not show covers. I don't think there's a way to get covers on PDFs. I could be wrong, but for the most part, they'll just have these blank covers. And also, it won't show the cover on the sleep screen when it's turned off since it doesn't have one. It'll just show a random screensaver image instead if you have an ad-free Kindle. All right, so let's load up a PDF. I'll show you some things. Unfortunately, they haven't really improved anything much except for this page turn animation. It's much more smooth and subtle than the old, like full black page flash that they used to do. And then scrolling and page zooming is a bit smoother now with the upgraded processor on the new Paperwhite. But for the most part, the PDF features are still exactly the same as they were 5 years ago. Amazon doesn't really have much interest in improving, experience for sideloaded content, it seems. So, but Kindles do have pretty decent software if you just want to do basic reading of like manuals and stuff like this. One problem I have come to notice with this newer software is hyperlinks. They don't work like 90% of the time. Like they used to work with the older software. You tap a hyperlink, it would take you to that page. Now, mostly it just turns the page or opens the menu. On rare occasions, it will actually activate the hyperlink and it will take you to that page. But with the newer software, they don't make it easy to go back. Anytime the hyperlink does work, there's no way to go back to the previous page. So yeah, it's a little bit more limited than it used to be. In fact, hyperlinks used to work. Now it just turns pages. Rarely it will work. If you hold down on it, it'll just open the dictionary. So I don't know what their deal is with the hyperlinks, but that's definitely a limitation with the newer software. So you can hold down on words, open up the dictionary just like with ebooks, look stuff up on Wikipedia, use the translations dictionaries. So you can, use it to add notes, add highlights, the usual type of stuff. If you hold down, you can highlight a section. Sometimes it's just a little bit wonkier than it is on ebooks, depending on your PDF. You have to select the text, be a little bit more deliberate. But then you can add these text notes and your highlights and stuff like that. They get added to a basic text file on your Kindle, and you can export that quite easily. So you can add bookmarks to PDFs, jump around to different parts of your book using bookmarks, and you also have your notes and highlights tab, which keeps track of all of your, highlights and notes that you've added to your books. And then you got the table of contents list here for navigating. One thing I have found extremely frustrating is if you have a very long table of contents list like this, it's like impossible to use this navigation because you'll just scroll like endlessly. It'll take like 5 minutes to get to the bottom. Luckily, you can enter a page number directly, jump that way. And so here's the new dialog with the newer software. You have to select stay here or go back to your previous location. And in this dialog at the bottom will remain indefinitely until you use it. So even if you open up the table of contents, jump to a new part of the book, it still stays there. But the problem with this is it only remembers one previous location. So you can't go back earlier locations. Like before, they used to have a back button up here and you could go back to multiple previous locations, but they removed that back button in an update a while ago. So now you just have the one previous location. You don't have that page scan feature like you do with ebooks. So you don't have that go back icon at all. So it's quite a bit different than with ebooks. You got the very basic layout settings. They have settings that inexplicably make the margins larger instead of smaller. Makes no sense for PDFs. The one nice thing is you can control contrast by using the contrast dial here to make the text darker. The only thing with that is it will make the images darker as well. So as you can see here with the image on the top, whenever you use the contrast setting, it will make the images darker as well. So here's like the lowest setting. The text is still quite readable. That's one thing with the newer screen on the Paperwhite. It does look quite good, has deeper contrast than the older Paperwhite. So blacks are just a little bit darker. The screen does look really good. So you do have the option to rotate to landscape mode, but the only issue with this is they only give you one option to rotate it. So it puts the large handle side on the left side, so you pretty much are forced to hold it left-handed. If you wanted to hold it right-handed, it's just not comfortable with that really small bezel and all the weight on the left side. So you really only have this one option for landscape mode, but it does work well for making the PDFs more readable. So let's go up and load a more common type of PDF, with super huge margins. But when you use landscape mode, it just fits to the screen a lot better. So this is definitely one way to get around the Kindle's smaller screen size here, since Amazon refuses to release anything larger than 7 inches. But yeah, I mean, PDFs, it's just going to depend on the individual file because they vary so much from one to the next. But this one, it actually lays out quite well in landscape mode, is an example. But I mean, it's just going to depend on some. They lay out better than others. So if we switch it back to portrait mode, you'll see how much harder it is to read in regular mode because it has these huge giant margins like PDFs often do. So it is nice being able to get rid of those in landscape mode. Another way to get rid of them is to double tap. Sometimes it'll activate the menu or it won't recognize it the first time you do it, but eventually it will recognize the double tap. And then you can get rid of margins that way. And it will work well if your PDF is very uniformly formatted where there's no variations like this. So it gets confused whenever there's any kind of variation in the, width of the PDF. It'll zoom in too far if there's like images or the text changes. So, I mean, it works well in this instance, and then you can scroll up or down the column. But, I mean, it just does not work well for turning pages if there's any kind of variance on the next page, because then the zoom level gets confused. Sometimes it'll also do that where it doesn't, turn the page. It'll just kind of flash a screen. But then when it does turn the page, the zoom level gets messed up and you kind of got to reset it again and start over. So, not the best setup here. That's exactly how it was on the older software too. So they have not improved that at all in 5 years since the last time I uploaded a PDF review. So the new Paperwhite, it adds the warm front light option so you can control the color of the front light. And the Signature Edition has the automatic light sensor, so you'll have that as well. And you also have dark mode. So you can switch over to dark mode if you wanted to read like this. Let's go to a different PDF. This one doesn't lay out too great. It's got super tiny text. So let's load up this one again. It's a little bit more better formatted for the smaller screen. So yeah, it just sort of depends on the kind of PDFs you're using. But you do have the dark mode option if you wanted to read with the white text on a black background. But as you notice, it will invert your images as well. But the refreshing is smooth as far as the, I don't have any issues with ghosting on this Paperwhite at all. I mean, it's always very clear, the screen. It's quite responsive. PDFs do bog it down a little bit every once in a while. It's the only time I've seen the new Paperwhite get bogged down at all is with PDFs. If you have a really large one, it will get a little bit slow sometimes. They got a different kind of search thing than in regular ebooks. You can just go to next and previous. It kind of hides half the page, which seems kind of silly, but you can do it that way. Sometimes we'll have to process a little bit more. But that is how searches work on PDFs with the Paperwhite. So that's about it for features with PDFs. They don't have nearly as many features as with ebooks. You can go in here and disable the touchscreen for everything but page swipes. If you're accidentally interacting with the touchscreen or something, you want to disable it to help with that. So, I mean, it can be a functional basic PDF reader, but without any like margin crop settings or, different navigation settings to follow columns and stuff. It's a lot more basic than some other devices like Onyx's e-readers. If you just want to, read some manuals or something, it can get the job done. But if you want to read PDFs all the time, something larger like the Onyx Note right here, it'll be a lot better for PDFs. They got a ton of features. I mean, pretty much everything you can need for PDFs. So that's definitely an advantage. And you also have the stylus, so you can write directly on the screen, take notes that way, and you can export those easily. So, I mean, if you really want a hardcore PDF reader, something like Onyx is going to work. Hyperlinks actually work when you tap them. Unlike the Kindle, actually right here, it does work. So every once in a while, it will work when you tap the hyperlinks on the Kindle, but it's very inconsistent, a lot more inconsistent than it used to be. I don't know what they changed. But for the most part, I mean, it'll work for basic PDF use, but you probably want something bigger and better if you're going to be reading PDFs all the time. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video. Check out the full review for more details. Thank you guys for watching. Bye.